Hi everyone, my name is Matt and I want to welcome you to our class. We're so excited to have you here. There's so much I want to tell you about what we're going to be doing. But first I want to tell you one way in which this class is probably different from any class you've been in before. You will actually have two teachers. One of your teachers you just met there in the classroom. And then there's me, Matt. I'll be your teacher via video. That may seem a little strange, but there's a lot of cool things that we can do with video teaching. Like I can give you a list of instructions behind me. I can put up helpful images to show you things. I can even play videos behind me from classes that we've done before. You'll get used to having a video teacher pretty soon. Now, before I tell you about this class, I want to tell you about our prize box. In this class, we give out prizes for people who are doing a good job following directions, listening to the teacher, and working hard. First, let me tell you how we keep track of the points in this class. You might have noticed that up on the board or up at the front of the room is a list of all the people in the class. Everybody starts out with 2 points, as you can see here. Now, it's kind of like a contest. Your teacher will be giving you points all through the class, not just today, but all of the times that we're here together. The points carry over each week. Now, I say it's a contest because there's a special prize for whoever gets the most points at the end of the last class. The special prize is a $10 Amazon gift card. Whoever has the most points at the end of the last class will win the gift card. Now, as you might know, you can buy almost anything you want on Amazon. They have toys and action figures and dolls and stuffed animals and anything that you're interested in. You could buy something for $10 or you could pair it with some other money that you have to buy something bigger. All of the other people in the class who are doing good also earn a prize. On the last day of class, your teacher will bring a prize box, and everyone who's doing good in class will get to pick one prize if they didn't win the $10 gift certificate. Now, you might be wondering, how do you earn points in the class? There's a bunch of ways to earn points. Your teacher will be giving points all the time. The main way is by following these 3 important rules. The first rule is to work hard. Your teacher will always be on the lookout to give points to those people who are working hard. The second rule is to take the class seriously. Don't get too silly during class. We're going to be doing some great things in this class, and we really want you to take it seriously. Have fun, but do your best. The last rule is when we're at meetings like this meeting right now. There's no talking at the meeting unless you raise your hand. So like when I'm talking to you from the video here, you should be silent and listening. Or when your teacher is talking to you, you should also be silent and listening. If you do have a comment or question, you should remember to raise your hand. Your teacher will always be looking to give points to people doing a good job when we're at our meetings. So those are our 3 rules. There's a few other ways that you can earn points in class too. One way is that sometimes your teacher will ring a little bell. When they do that, that means it's time to come over to the meeting rug or the meeting area. We'll give you a little 10-second countdown that looks like this whenever your teacher rings the bell and asks you to come over. Your teacher will usually give a point to the 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 people, it's your teacher's choice, who come over quickest without running. If you run over, it doesn't count. Now, I do want to mention your teacher can also take away points. So if you forget to raise your hand, or if you're talking at the meeting, or if you're like the last one to come over and you are like really slow coming to the meeting area, your teacher could take away a point. In fact, I've asked them to do that if you are having trouble, just to give you a reminder. So I mentioned that everyone who's doing good will earn a prize, and the person who gets the most points will earn the $10 gift certificate. But you might be wondering, Matt, what do you mean by doing good? Take a look at this list of students behind me. Now in this class, you can see that Sarah would have got the gift certificate because she finished first. If there had been a tie, both of the people who finished first would get a $10 gift certificate. But in this case, it's just Sarah, so she gets the gift certificate. Now you can see that all the other people in the class were working pretty hard too. Everybody got more than 30 points, which is great. So in this case, all of the people in the class besides Sarah would have got to pick from the prize box at the end of the last class, and Sarah would get the gift certificate. But let's change things for a second. Let's say that Johnny just had like a lot of trouble in this class. Look at Johnny's points now. He was talking during the meetings, he wasn't working hard, he was being really silly, and he only ended up with 8 points. You can see that 8 points isn't very good compared to the rest of the students, so Johnny wouldn't get a prize. Also, I just wanted to mention this. I don't think this will happen with anyone in our class, but if Johnny was really having that much trouble, we might have to send an email home to mom or dad just saying how much trouble he was having following our rules. So I wanted to get all that out of the way. I think that you'll be doing great though, and that's not going to happen to anybody in our class. Okay, so remember to work really hard, listen to Matt and your teacher during the meetings, and take the class really seriously and do your best. We'll start the points now. Your teacher will start to look to give points. And now I'm going to tell you a little bit about our class. Now I want to talk about this class. It's called Bookworms, the Reading Comprehension class. Reading comprehension means understanding what you read. In this class, we're going to practice some different ways to better understand what we read. But to make it more fun, we're going to do what's called an author study. An author study is when we read a lot of different books from the same author. We're going to read books from one of my favorite authors, Bill Peet. He was a children's book author for many, many years, and he wrote exciting, interesting books full of adventure. They're really fun to read. We're going to read some of these books as a class and practice some of those reading comprehension strategies. But you're also going to pick a project to do about a Bill Peet story, either by yourself or with a partner. At the end of the last class, we're going to gather all the projects together in something I call a book gallery. And we're going to have the parents come to the book gallery and see all the work that you've done. I'll talk more about the book gallery projects a little bit later. Now, did you know that professors at big universities study how kids learn best to read? They not only study like how kids learn to read the words in a book, but they also study what strategies kids use to best understand the books. Like this professor here, she's a professor at Harvard University, and she spends her time sitting with kids and learning how they best understand the books that they read. Those professors have come up with a number of strategies that kids use to best understand books. The first one that we're going to study today is called making predictions. Now, as you may know, a prediction is kind of like a guess. It's what they call an educated guess. That means that you're not just taking a wild guess, like a random guess. You're basing your guess on some kind of information that you have. Like, look at these two examples. In the first one, I said to myself, I wonder what the weather will be like tomorrow. I don't know. I guess it will be snowy and 34 degrees. Now, in the second example, I looked at some weather patterns from previous years around this time. I looked at some computer models of how the weather is moving across the country. I looked at how the weather was yesterday and the day before to see what temperature it was and whether it was raining or snowing. And then I used all that information to guess that tomorrow it's going to snow. Now, which of these is a prediction and which one is a guess? Find someone and turn and talk and answer this question. Which is a prediction and which is a guess? Ready, turn and talk. So as you might have said, the prediction is more than just a guess. It's using some information to figure out what's going to happen, or at least to try to figure it out. Like I said, we're going to be reading a lot of books by Bill Peet. We're going to do a little prediction activity. I want to get in the habit of predicting things. And in this activity, I'm going to give you the covers of a number of different Bill Peet books. Some of which we have here in the classroom, some of which we're going to read, a few of which we won't read. I want you to look at those covers and see if you can make a prediction based on the information in the picture, based on the title of the book, what you think might happen in each book. You're going to work with a partner and you're going to have 9 minutes to try to figure out as many as you can. For each book, I want you to write down your prediction, and I also want you to write down what information led you to make that prediction. What evidence do you have? We're going to give 1 point for each book that you can make a prediction for and cite some evidence for why you made that prediction. Once your teacher passes out the papers to each group, then you'll get started. Okay, let's begin. All right, thanks for coming back to the meeting area. And we'll hold on to those prediction sheets as we read the Bill Pete book so we can see if your predictions were accurate or not. Now, one of the books that you didn't make a prediction for is called The Wing Ding Dilly. It's a Bill Pete book, and I wonder by looking at the cover of the book if you are able to make a prediction about what this book is about. Let's take 30 seconds, turn and talk with your partner, and see if you can predict what The Wing Ding Dilly's all about. Ready? Go. Now in a second we're going to make some predictions about the book as I read it to you. And I want you to be thinking while I'm reading about what you predict will happen in the next part of the book. Remember I told you that those professors at Harvard study what strategies help kids best understand books? Well, they found that there's kind of like two different types of readers. One type of reader is the passive reader. That kind of reader is very relaxed. In fact, they're almost too relaxed. It's like they're not really using their mind very much while they're reading the book to think about what might happen next. But the researchers at Harvard found that if a student is thinking about what will happen next in the book, if they're constantly making predictions, they'll understand the book better. So let's practice that while I read you the Wing Ding Dilly. In a second, your teacher's going to hand out some prediction sheets, and you're going to listen to the book, but in a few different parts of the book, I'm going to stop and ask you to write down your prediction of what will happen next. Okay, now that you have your prediction sheet, let's start the book. So, The Wing Ding Dilly by Bill Pete. Scamp flopped down heavily on the porch with a mournful sigh. The old farm dog had been in a miserable mood for weeks, and no one knew why. Not even his best friend Orvie Jarvis could guess what the trouble might be. Before the dark mood crept over him, Scamp had been a happy, carefree dog. He was always up early, racing out to the barn lot ahead of Orvie, eager for the boy to finish the morning chores so that the two of them could go rambling around the countryside. But now Scamp moped on the porch until Orvie called him, and then he came drooping along at the boy's heels, sad-eyed and listless, not caring how long it took to finish the chores. "What's come over you, old Scamp?" asked Orvie one day. "What makes you so sad?" Scamp's only reply was a dreary sigh. There was no way of telling Orvie that he was tired of being a dog, that he wanted to be a horse, and not just any horse. Scamp wanted to be a great horse, like Palomar, the giant percheron who lived on the farm just across the road. Back in those days, there were lots of buggies and wagons, so horses were very important. There's a picture of a buggy and wagon with a horse right there. Palomar was especially important. He had won blue ribbons at horse shows and fairs all over the country, so he was famous. People traveled hundreds of miles just for a look at the great horse, and Palomar always treated the crowd to a good show by high-stepping around and around his pasture in true champion style. Everyone admired Palomar, but no one ever gave Scamp as much as a glance. No one but his friend Orvie. Scamp often dreamed that he was the famous Palomar surrounded by an admiring crowd. Sometimes when the dog was sure that no one was watching, he would imitate the great horse and go high-stepping around the barn lot with his nose in the air. Then one day Orvie caught him doing it. "Ho, ho, Scamp," he chortled. "What are you up to? Who do you think you are, you silly old dog?" Scamp had never felt so foolish in all his life. To be called a silly old dog was more than he could bear. and while Orvie was busy feeding the chickens, Scamp went slinking out of the barn lot and on down the road. He was running away. Now just where he was going he had no idea, but after trotting along for about a mile, the dog found himself panting. It was a hot summer afternoon, much too hot to be trotting around in a shaggy fur coat, and when he came to a dense woods, he stopped. Scamp had heard about this place. People believed that a wicked little witch lived here who possessed great magic power, and if anyone dared to enter the woods she might turn them into a stone or into a toad. But Scamp was in no mood to worry about a little witch, so in he went. It was much cooler in the dark spooky woods and ever so quiet. The only sound was the burbling of a brook running along through a jumble of rocks. Okay, so I want you to make your first prediction here. You've seen the cover of the book. You know what the name of the book is. You know that Scamp is entering some woods where a little witch lives. I want you to make a prediction of what you think might happen next based on that information that you have. So let's take a minute to write down your prediction, and don't forget to write down also how you made that prediction or what evidence you used. Okay, let's begin. Okay, let's see if your prediction comes true. Now the brook finally trickled down to a crystal clear pool where Scamp stopped to stare at his gloomy reflection. This was the first time he had taken a good look at himself, and more than ever he wished he was a horse. All at once the hair at the back of his neck bristled. Someone was watching. Quickly Scamp wheeled around, looking right and left, and then finally up into a sycamore tree. And there was the little witch leaning out of the window of her treehouse. Scamp was on his feet, all ready to run, when the witch said, "So you want to be a horse, do you?" And before you could say scotch, he flew out the door and down the steps and was nose to nose with the bewildered dog. "Why, old Zildy can turn you into a horse in a twinkling," she said, patting him gently on the head. "Oh, but I can do much better than that, doggy. How would you like to be something fantastic? The only one of its kind in all the world. A marvelous, magnificent something I call a wing-ding-dilly. What do you say?" Scamp cocked his head in thought for a few seconds, and then with a wag of the tail barked his yes bark. "Good dog, so we'll get on with it," she cried, snapping a twig off the sycamore. "I don't really need a wand. Any old thing will do. My magic power is all in the words. Just watch." Suddenly Zildy was dancing about like a grasshopper, waving the twig in the air, and in her screechy voice she recited the magic words. "Diggity doggity ziddle-dee zump, we'll start right off with a camel hump. The camel hind legs, skaroodle-dee-doo, with zebra stripes and a zebra tail too. Now for a neck, kersnickety-snaff, with squarish brown spots just like a giraffe. Kalumpity mumbo jumbo kajelephant, here's the big feet and front legs of an elephant. Zum zum zaroot, most anything goes, so how about a rhinoceros nose? Then elephant ears, kerflippity flop, and reindeer horns, zilly zop, out the top." I've done it, Zildy cried gleefully. "There you are, dog, the one and only wing-ding-dilly. Go take a look at yourself." The sudden change had made him dizzy, and Scamp tottered unsteadily on his new set of legs, and he turned around to face the pool. What he saw was much too much to take it all in at once, and with a loud rhino snort he went staggering backwards. "See what I mean?" said the little witch. "You're one whopping big surprise. Now I'd better skedaddle if I'm going to make cookies today." And Zildy scurried up the steps into the treehouse, leaving the wing-ding-dilly wondering what he would do. Finally he decided he better go home. Just as he started off, the witch called out the window, "Take care you don't step in my tulip bed with those big clumsy feet of yours." In the shadows of the sycamore were rows of bright yellow flowers, and as he headed back through the trees, he was careful to step around them. Now, Scamp looks really different and really kind of weird, or at least different from how animals usually look. So what do you think is going to happen to Scamp? In box number 2, I want you to make a prediction and tell us what information you used to make that prediction. Okay, let's take a minute and begin. Alright, let's see what happens to poor Scamp. Making his way through the dense woods had been easy for the dog, but now it was almost impossible for the wingding dilly. It was a struggle every step of the way, with the antlers catching on tree limbs and the rhino horns hooking onto vines, the clumsy elephant feet stumbling over logs, and the camel feet tripping over the elephant feet. The going was so slow that it was near sundown when he finally made it to the edge of the woods. As Scamp poked his head out the trees, he surprised a sow and her 6 piglets. Squealing in terror, they went racing through the weeds. "What a fright I must be," thought Scamp. "I'm in no shape to be running around in plain sight. No telling what people might do." And then, stretching his long giraffe neck, he raised his head for a view of the countryside. As far as he could see, the fields were deserted, and so were the roads. All the farmers had gone to dinner, so there was a good chance of getting home without being seen. Now, as he lumbered on out into the open road, he found the going much easier. It was just a matter of keeping the long, striding camel legs from overrunning the plodding, slow elephant legs. And he was clumping along at a pretty good clip, when all at once he heard Orvy calling, "Here, Scamp! Here, Scamp! Here, Scamper boy!" He was coming up the road just over the next hill. But if Orvy should come face to face with a wingding dilly, especially in the eerie light of evening, he might scare his scrawny little friend out of a year's growth. That wouldn't do. It's true, Orvy would probably be scared if he ran into the wingding dilly, not knowing that it's Scamp. Now, in one clumsy leap, Scamp was over a fence and sprawling headlong into a wheat field. There he remained flat to the ground, scarcely breathing, and as still as a wheat shock. When Orvy came to the top of the hill and stopped for one last call, such a long, loud, "Here, Scamper!" that it echoed for a mile across the countryside. Then he listened for an answering bark, but there was only the far-away crowing of a rooster. Where could he be, wondered Orvy, as he turned and headed back down the road. Scamp raised his head to watch until the boy was no more than a speck in the distance. Then with an effort he hauled himself to his feet and hobbled over the back fence onto the road. Now by this time he was getting leg weary, and he went plodding along ever so slowly. It was growing dark when he finally reached the Jarvis farm. Cautiously he pushed open the gate, tiptoed across the yard to the house, and peeked in the kitchen window. The family had just finished dinner, everyone but Orvy, who sat at the table staring at his plate. "Scamp is always home at dinner time," said the boy. "Something's happened to him, or he'd be here." "If old Scamp's really gone for good," said his father, "then I'll tell you what. Armstrongs have a new colt, and if they'll sell him, he's all yours. How would you like that, son?" "It's not the same," said Orvy. "You can't get to know a horse, not like you can get to know a dog. Old Scamp understood just about everything I said. He was a lot smarter than any horse, and besides, he was a real friend." Scamp could hardly believe his big flappy ears. So Orvy didn't really mean it when he called him a silly old dog. In fact, Orvy thought he was smart, and Scamp heaved a great sigh of relief. But what would Orvy think of a wingding dilly? Scamp decided to wait until the morning to find out, and he stood there in the dark until he was sure everyone had gone to bed. Then the wingding dilly stretched out full length on the front porch with a monstrous yawn. "Maybe this is nothing but a bad dream," he thought, "and when I wake up, I'll be the same as ever." Pretty soon he was sound asleep and snoring just like a rhinoceros. The next thing Scamp knew, it was morning, and Orby was shouting, "Dad, Mom, come quick, there's a great big thing out here." The Wingding Dilly struggled to his feet, looking wildly about for the big thing. Then he suddenly remembered that he was the thing, and went stumbling backwards off the porch and out into the yard. And in one clumsy leap he was over the fence and galloping away down the road. His head was in such a whirl he didn't see the man driving his cows to pasture until he was almost upon them. In a panic the man jumped into a ditch, and the bawling, terrified cows went crashing through a fence, scattering in all directions. Another man was so shocked at the sight of the gigantic beast he lost control of his tractor, and the machine went plowing through a haystack to end up in a duck pool. Then there was a near head-on collision with a horse and buggy. The horrified horse left the road in one leap to go scrambling up a telegraph pole, buggy and all. Now the Wingding Dilly didn't dare stop or even slow down, and he kept going full gallop all the way back to the woods. I wonder if you had predicted some of that chaos that might happen. We're going to stop there and finish up the story a little bit later on in class today. We'll see what happens to Scamp, the Wingding Dilly. Now earlier I told you about our book project gallery. You're going to be picking a project to do in this class, and I'm going to tell you about some of the projects a little bit later. You're going to be picking one of the Bill Peet books that we have in our collection to use as a basis for your project. So I want to give you about 25 minutes right now to look through the Bill Peet books that we have in our collection. I bet you'll really like some of them. We have them all displayed here, and what I'd like you to do is look through them, and you're going to pick one of the books to read a little bit of today by yourself. You can find a different place in the room, either at a desk or somewhere else on the floor, to spread out and to read some Bill Peet books. You might pick one book to read for the whole time, or you might trade it in for another book if you decide you don't really like that one and you want to try another one. I am going to put a rule: you're only allowed to make 2 trades, okay? Also, for this part of the class, you're reading silently by yourself. We'll have some things where you work with a partner later, but this is an individual time. So you should be reading not with a partner, but by yourself. Okay, in a second, your teacher is going to give you some time to look through the books, to pick a book, and to find a spot to start reading. Okay, let's begin. Okay, thanks for coming back together. So your teacher's going to pass out a sheet now which lists all the different types of projects that you can do for our book project gallery in this class. You're going to pick the one you want to do, and you can do it either by yourself or with a partner. As you'll see, there are a whole bunch of projects like story maps, comic books that you can create, graphic novels you can create, autobiographies, plays, poems. You're going to see which one appeals to you and which one you want to do. What I want you to do right now is to kind of look through those projects for a couple of minutes and think about which one you might want to do. You don't have to make a final decision right now because I want to give you a little more time to read through the books, and I want to talk a little bit more specifically about each project. But right now, let's take a couple minutes for your teacher to pass out the worksheet that shows the different projects and read through those and see which one you might want to do. Okay, hopefully you have your eye on a project or two that you might want to do. Right now I want to finish up our story, The Wingding Dilly, and to finish making some predictions about what will happen. So your teacher should make sure that you have your prediction sheet, and once you're ready, we'll continue the story. So when we left off before, we had a Wingding Dilly running through the countryside causing all kinds of problems. Now, Scamp was hoping that Zildy would understand his awful predicament and undo her magic spell. Once again, he fought his way through the tangle of trees, and when he reached the treehouse, he gave the door a resounding thump with his snout, and then watched for Zildy to pop her head out of the window. But no Zildy appeared. The shutters were closed and the door was locked and bolted. If she's gone, Scamp reasoned, she'll be back sooner or later, so what I'll do is wait. But it would be a very long wait. Early that morning, Zildy had packed her suitcase, spruced herself up in her fancy clothes, and left on a trip to visit her sister in Massachusetts. She hadn't sailed away on a broomstick like most witches do. Zildy was in no hurry, so she had taken the train. Now she was riding along in comfort, munching on sugar cookies with no thought whatever of what might have happened to the Wingding Dilly. In the meantime, all the farmers in the neighborhood had formed a small army, and with guns and pitchforks they followed the trail of huge footprints straight to the woods. But they didn't dare go in, for now the woods were more frightening than ever. I want you to make a prediction now about what you think will happen next, especially using that picture of the farmers and predicting what might happen to the Wingding Dilly now. Let's take a minute and in box 3 make your third prediction. Okay, let's see if your prediction comes true. I like how you're being an active reader right now and really thinking about what will happen next in the story. That's always a good thing to do when you're reading. "Wait him out," said Big Moose Mulford, the leader of the army, "and the minute the monster shows his face, powie, we'll pop him off." The farmers stood watch into the evening and then all through the night, and when morning came there was no sign of the monster. "From now on," yawned Moose, "we'll split up in bunches, with some taking the night watch and others taking the day." But after watching the woods night and day for a week, the biggest thing to come out was a rabbit. By this time, news of the monster had spread all over the county, all the way to Central City, and finally to Claxton J. Pringle, the great showman. Now C.J. Pringle's Palace of Living Wonders towered majestically above the city square. Over the main entrance was a sign reading, "Menagerie of the Marvelous and the Amazing," the most colossal collection of incredible creatures to be seen anywhere on earth. The great showman had traveled all over the world in search of spectacular new attractions for his menagerie. And when he read in the newspaper that a fantastic giant of a beast was running loose in the county, C.J. was jubilant. "Eureka!" he cried. "Why, if this beast is half what they say, it could be worth a fortune. But first I must get my hands on the thing." Alright, having heard about C.J. Pringle, in box 4 I want you to make your next prediction of what will happen next in the story. Okay, let's begin. Now, one thing I want to remind you of is some of your predictions probably will come true or came true, and some of them might not. That's okay. Even if your predictions don't come true, it's been shown that you'll better understand the story if you're thinking ahead and you're really active in making predictions. Within half an hour, CJ had rounded up his roughest, toughest crew of roustabouts, and they took off in their Hupperson autobus, followed by a 10-ton beast-moving van. The great showman was in a desperate hurry, so he went at top speed all the way with the horn blaring full blast, warning everyone to clear the road. And in no time they came skidding to a stop alongside the woods where all the farmers rushed out to greet them. "If you've come after the monster," said Moose Mulford, "he's somewhere back in those trees. But you'd better be careful. He's a real whopper." "The bigger the better," said CJ, and then turning to his men he warned, "Don't get too rough. I want the beast in one piece." "Easy does it," they promised, and with lassos and chains and leg irons, the roustabouts went charging into the woods. Now by the time Scamp had discovered what all the crashing around in the brush was about, he was surrounded. He tried to run, but after one turn around the sycamore, the men closed in, grabbing onto his legs, his neck, and his tail. In a fast and furious struggle, they wrestled him to the ground, roped and chained him from head to foot, and then dragged him away through the woods. "Thunderation!" roared CJ at first sight of the giant beast. "He is a whopper. No wonder there was such a big hullabaloo. Say now," he exclaimed, "there's a good name for the thing. A hullabalooper. The super-duper hullabalooper." "Suits him to a T," chuckled Moose Mulford. Now that the danger was past, the farmers were a happy bunch. They were laughing and joking while the beast was being loaded into the van. And as C.J. Pringle and his crew headed back up the road towards the city, the farmers gave them a rousing cheer. That night, the poor bewildered and bedraggled super-duper hullabalooper, also known as the Wingding Dilly, and also known as Scamp, was hustled down a ramp into the basement of Pringle's palace and left in a cage with other living wonders of the world. There he remained while CJ went bustling around the city getting placards printed and posters painted to advertise his fabulous new attraction, the most colossal, the most stupendous and phenomenal creature in all the universe. Don't miss the grand presentation at C.J. Pringle's Palace of Living Wonders on the great day of July 20th. Now when the great day arrived, Pringle's palace was jammed to overflowing, with thousands more waiting in the line outside. "Keep calm, everyone," bellowed CJ, as the noisy, excited crowd kept pushing and shoving for a closer look at the amazing beast high up on a pedestal. The super-duper hullabalooper was too much to believe. Some people poked at him with canes, while others yanked on his tail to make sure the beast was real. Now Scamp was even more famous than the great Palomar, and yet he'd never been so miserable in all his life. He wished there was some way to escape, but he was always kept chained to the pedestal, and after the show he was caged in the basement for the night. So it seemed that Scamp was doomed to spend the rest of his days as the greatest of all living wonders at Pringle's Palace. All right, let's see how the story ends. Then one afternoon Zildy returned home. "Zark!" she cried when she reached her treehouse. "Somebody's trampled my tulips, and I know who!" All around the sycamore were the tell-tale elephant tracks and the camel tracks of the Wingding-Dilly. "I'll get even," she muttered, "and don't worry, Wingding-Dilly, I'll find you." Then Zildy shut her eyes to concentrate. "Now let me see. Aha, so there you are, living in a palace. A celebrity, are you? Well, we'll fix that." And in one hop Zildy was up on a stump, and then aiming her umbrella in the exact direction of Central City, the angry little witch exploded. Whammy kazammy, scrumbo scaroof, zigazumzap, zarutu, kerpoof. And in one great purple poof, the super-duper hullabalooper was gone. In its place stood a plain, ordinary, frowsy brown dog. The crowd was so flabbergasted that for a full minute, they were left gaping in amazement. Then all at once they burst into an uproar of shouting. "Hey, it's a fake! It's a fake! The hullabalooper's a hoax! We've been hornswoggled! We've been rooked! Klaxon J. Pringle is a swindler and a crook!" For the very first time the great showman was caught speechless. In a huffing, puffing fury, he seized the dog by the tail and the scruff of the neck, and then hustled him out through the crowd. "Out, out, and the devil take you!" he bellowed as he flung the dog out the front door. In one bounce Scamp was on his feet, racing down the street, dodging in and out through the traffic. And now that he was free, there was nothing more to worry about. Finding his way out of the big city was easy to do. Now dogs have a fine sense of direction, and by nightfall Scamp was loping along a dusty road far out in the country. "I'm lucky to be a dog," he said to himself, "with sense enough to find my way home. Even a great horse like Palomar would probably get lost in the city." Scamp had not felt so happy and carefree in a long time, and when he came over the last hill and spied the Jarvis house, he barked joyfully. Then, as he came bounding into the yard, Orvy leaped off the porch, shouting, "Scamp! Scamp! It's old Scamper! Scamp's come home!" In a wild rough and tumble greeting, the boy and the dog went sprawling into the grass. "Scamp, you old rascal!" cried Orvy. "Where have you been? Where have you been all this time?" "Ruff, ruff!" replied Scamp, which was as much as the dog could tell him. And of course Orvy would never guess where Scamp had been, not in a zillion years. And that's the end of the Wingding-Dilly. Good job making those predictions and being an active reader. Now I want to give you a few more minutes to look through those Bill Peet books and do a little bit of reading while you think about what project you might do. You can continue with the same book as last time, or you could start a new book if you want to. Remember, only 2 trade-ins. Okay, let's begin. Now we're going to do a little art project which is based on the book The Wingding Dilly. You know how Zildy takes different parts of different animals to create the Wingding Dilly, like the elephant feet and the camel hump and other parts of different animals? Well, you're going to do the same thing to create a beast of your own. You're going to use the feet of one animal and the ears of another, and you're going to name the beast that you come up with, and also figure out what interesting like powers or abilities that new beast will have. Now the way you're going to draw and write about your beast is by creating a kind of like a Pokemon card, if you've ever seen those cards. Here are a couple examples of what Pokemon cards look like if you haven't seen them. And your Pokemon card isn't going to be Pokemon, it's going to be a card for the beast that you create. On a piece of white construction paper, you're going to divide up your paper in the same way as in this example. And here in this part of your paper, you're going to draw the picture of your beast with the different parts from different animals. Then down here, you're going to write a couple of sentences describing your beast. And then on this part here, you're going to write what powers or abilities your beast has. And the powers and abilities may have to do with the animals that you select. For instance, if your beast has the head of an owl, maybe it can turn its head around. Or if it has flippers like a dolphin, maybe it can swim, things like that. Your teacher is giving bonus points up to 3 points for anybody who does a really nice job making their card beautiful. That means using a lot of color, writing a lot about your beast, and making it look really great. We're going to hang these up in the book project gallery that we're inviting the parents to attend, so we want them to look really great. So concentrate on finishing your Pokemon type card of your beast, and we're going to work on those. Good luck!